Welcome to the Soul Archaeology podcast, a space for connection, resonance, witnessing, and learning. Together we'll harvest medicine from the spiral of life, sharing conversations with other embodied humans who have navigated their own initiations and found alignment with their true soul essence. With weekly astrology, energy updates, embodied conversation, and channeled teachings, this is a space for you to land and find resonance with the spiral of your own soul. Hello there. So happy to be back here with you. Happy December. It's so wild to think about this year coming to a close. I truly cannot believe it. I was thinking back to December 2023 while I was recording the 2024 forecast and how so much of what I was sort of feeling into has already occurred. And the last piece is this powerful Mars Retrograde that we have coming up. But just thinking back to this time last year, last December, and it's interesting because we do have some overlapping energy as well with last December, working through a lot of completion, being in a Mercury retrograde as well to end 2023, gearing up for Pluto's shift into Aquarius last January. So we're in an interestingly similar place, although our lives might look completely different. And I think that's a lot of what this time is about as we travel along the spiral of life, to notice how we might have similar energies or similar experiences or similar patterns that surface our wounds or trigger points. But it is really our job to notice that even though that might be the case, our lives are different. We respond differently to stimuli. We respond differently to the patterns that we've experienced before, a different time along the spiral. And I always feel that thresholds are a perfect time to revisit and reflect and really sit with how much has changed. Even if certain things feel similar, you might feel similar ways about certain experiences, or you might feel that things haven't shifted or moved as much as you wanted them to. I feel that now, especially with both Mercury and Mars in their retrograde, it's such a powerful time to sit back and reflect, to look at how much has changed, how your relationship even subtly has shifted with certain wounds or triggers or experiences, people, relationships. December will be a month of slowness. We begin to spiral inward, spiral downward, more deeply into ourselves, into our underworld, into our internal experiences, examining what is here, what needs our attention, our attunement, what needs more space. And December, of course, has the winter solstice. So the beginning of winter begins, which is very much so a spiral inward. So we're not even to that point yet. We're still in the process of traveling deeper and deeper. We haven't reached our bottom point. We haven't reached full darkness quite yet, or the fullest darkness that we'll experience this month. Because of course the days are getting shorter. They continue to until we hit the winter solstice on the 21st. And then of course the days begin to elongate. We incorporate more light. But until then, we're on this journey of spiraling inward, examining our comfortability, our relationship with the darkness, with the shadows, with the quiet, with the solitude. What happens to our minds? What happens to our nervous system when we have more darkness, more shadow, more space to be alone with our thoughts and our experiences. This week is a big one for me personally. I have the anniversary of my dog Arlo's passing on December 4th. And it's been really powerful to examine within myself this relationship with grief and death, with transition, change, releasing what's out of my control, and embracing the beauty in surrender, in receiving the gifts that are only available when we truly, truly let go. This year has been filled with immense grief for me personally, and not even just due to his physical loss, but to the loss of the version of me that was so intertwined and woven into his nervous system, into his physicality. I've had to do some very, very, very deep nervous system work, remothering work, and I'm still on that journey. He's been my greatest teacher and continues to be. And as I mentioned before, I think I mentioned it in the last podcast. If not, I mentioned it in my newsletter. But the subconscious recognizes anniversaries and holidays as timestamps, as points along our timeline that hold significance and remembering. That's why holidays can feel so activating, because they bring up so much material, things that have been stored in the boxes of our subconscious that we haven't accessed until Thanksgiving rolls around again. And so it's a beautiful time to unbox some of what surfaces over holidays. And for me, I'm certainly unboxing the memory of his passing, of letting him go, of the journey that I've been on over the last year, and the complexity of emotions that journey has held. The gratitude, the grief, the pain, the anger, the frustration, the joy, the laughter. And I think in many ways, there are many of us experiencing this right now as we are in this underworld journey with Mercury and Mars. It's a powerful time of reflection, of looking back at what has unfolded over the last 6 months, over the last year, and even thinking back to the end of 2022, the beginning of 2023. We ended 2022 with a Mars retrograde in Gemini. It went direct on January 12th, 2023. So we started, I remember this too, we started 2023 with a Mars and Mercury retrograde. And the last time we had a Mars in Cancer, or Mars in Leo retrograde, it will retrograde back through Leo and then back through Cancer as well. So it's kind of covering both. Was in 2007, we had a Mars retrograde in Cancer. And 2009, we had a Mars retrograde in Leo. So it can be really helpful to, since these retrogrades bring us into the past and they bring us into the underworld material, into our subconscious, which holds past data and information, it can be helpful to look back on where this timeline has been activated before, where these boxes held within your subconscious have been unboxed before. The whole month of December just feels slow. It feels like it's giving our body a chance to catch up with our soul work. We've done so much deeply powerful soul work this year. It's been absolutely wild. It feels like, once we moved out of that retrograde energy in the beginning of 2024, we hit the fast forward button and the year just pushed us through these quantum leaps in such intense ways. So this week, of course, we begin December, which is the last stage of our 2024 journey. The main point we have this week is Mars stationing retrograde in Leo on December 6th. But we also have some action midweek that will begin to provide some illumination, some highlighting within Mercury's journey through Sagittarius, Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. On December 4th through the 5th, we have Mercury's cazimi. So Mercury and the sun meet. A cazimi is when the sun meets with another planet. That planet passes through the heart of the sun. So it means there's a conjunction in the sky between the sun and another planet. And this is actually sort of a significant point during a Mercury retrograde because it begins a new journey through the retrograde cycle. When we have a cazimi, it's an awakening period. It's an illumination. It might feel like the lights turn off and then they turn back on again. This is also opposite Jupiter and squaring Saturn. So it's forming a T-square between Mercury, the sun, Jupiter in Gemini, and Saturn in Pisces. Jupiter is currently retrograde in Gemini. Saturn just went direct a few weeks ago in Pisces. So we have some energy that, we've kind of talked about this new moon that was square Saturn as well. Saturn likes to ask for us to up-level or mature. But what it also does is it reveals where we're limited, where we have restriction. And it asks for us to deal with that or to manage that in a way that's evolved, that's mature. But it also gives us an opportunity to break through some of those walls, some of those barriers in an evolved, conscious way. On December 6th, we have Mars stationing retrograde in Leo at 6 degrees, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But on December 7th, Venus is conjunct Pluto at 0 degrees Aquarius. So this can definitely provide a boost of energy to our relationships, to our creative endeavors, but it can also bring up power struggles that we hold within relationships, our relationship to self and our relationship to others, our relationship with money. And then on December 7th, Neptune also stations direct in Pisces, which is significant because next year Neptune will be shifting out of Pisces. And this is a deeply clarifying moment. Neptune in Pisces has been such a deep journey into our subconscious, into our intuition. It's been bringing us into where we hold illusions. So when it moves direct, it's giving us an opportunity or a gift to materialize what's been abstract within our lives, to confront what our intuition has been telling us or revealing to us. And when Neptune enters Aries next year, it will enter Aries for a period of time before it goes retrograde and goes back into Pisces. So we'll be in this ingress period, this dance back and forth for a few years. And I'll talk more about that in the 2025 forecast episode. But it's definitely, as it navigates these last few degrees of Pisces, Neptune is really asking for us to up-level our intuition, our discernment, to dream bigger, to clear our illusions. And so this is a deeply clarifying time as well. So you might receive over the weekend some insight, some clarity, some revelations, especially as Venus and Pluto conjunct as well. So like I said, in December, things really begin to slow. The journey begins to spiral downward and inward. It's not that it's less intense, but it's more of a contraction, more of a slowing down, more of a pulling inward so we can reevaluate what's unfolded over the last year, so we can sit with and integrate all of the change. We can examine the ways that we've changed. We can examine where we still need attention and attunement. This is a time for self to catch up with soul, to integrate what's unfolded, and to really lay the foundations for this new year ahead, this new Gregorian year that's filled with rapid transformation and growth. Things might move slowly, not just in December, but in January, February, even March, even a little bit into April. It might feel like the new year really begins in May when Mars moves fully out of its shadow on May 2nd. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't get things done, that you can't start new projects. It just means that it's important for us to flow, to release our grip around timelines, around expectations, around the things that we seek to control to feel safe within our lives. Mars stations retrograde on Friday, December 6th at 6 degrees Leo. And it's retrograde until February 23rd, 2025. So it moves from 6 degree Leo from December 6th to January 6th. And then it moves into Cancer from January 6th to February 23rd, 2025, when it stations direct. So it moves from 6 degrees of Leo all the way back to 17 degrees Cancer. And this is, you don't have to necessarily understand all of these details, but it's important to note that this is an interesting Mars retrograde because it touches both Leo and Cancer themes within our lives. So Mars will be in its shadow until May 2nd. It's been in its shadow since early October, when Mars is at 17 degrees of Cancer. And when we're talking about retrogrades, I talked a lot about this in the last episode, but I'd like to cover it again because it's so important. I think that retrogrades unfortunately get a really bad reputation, and I see that they're huge opportunities. They're capsules that hold us in discomfort in order to help us shift something. They interrupt our flow, the normal flow of our lives, in order to bring us into something deeper. They unlock the walls of our basement, our subconscious, our underworld, so that we can examine what's there, what needs our attention, what wants to be integrated, seen, brought to the light. And retrogrades draw the energy inward. We enter down through the spiral of our own subconscious. It reveals what's suppressed, what's fragmented, what needs light, so that we can emerge on the other side more whole, more integrated, more self-aware, more embodied, more empowered. It draws us deeper into ourselves to reclaim and really shed light on what's shadowed, what is seeking the light of our own consciousness. So you can see how a retrograde would be an opportunity. But what it also surfaces is our discomfort with change, with feeling out of control, with surrender, with trust and faith. When our lives are interrupted, when our normal flow is interrupted, when we're brought into something we weren't expecting, it can bring up the fear around the unknown. It can show us where we grip and control different aspects of our lives in order to feel safe. And retrogrades, similar to eclipses, really force us into reckoning moments, into periods of transformation and growth so that we may realign. We can become more embodied and more whole. It also tends to bring us into the past, so we're brought into the spaces we have forgotten, either consciously or unconsciously, what we've stored away because it was too much to process in the present moment, things maybe from other lifetimes, other dimensions, things that have been inherited through our ancestry, things we're not aware of but are operating unconsciously within us. And a Mars retrograde isn't as common. It happens about every 2 years that Mars stations retrograde. And it is considered an uncomfortable time. Mars represents our drive, our will, passion, our relationship with control and power, sex, action. It really shows or reveals how we assert ourselves, how we move through life. And when Mars stations retrograde, its energy slows down. Mars really prefers to be in a sign that allows it to move freely. Typically a fire sign. It's happiest in Aries. It even likes to be in Leo. But when it begins to slow down, it can surface our frustration, our anger, because Mars really wants to move. It wants to take action. It wants to assert. This is a deep maturation portal. This is Jedi work. It's a time to master our emotions, to reckon with our own internal discomfort around the unknown, the pivots, the reroutes, the shifting timelines beneath our feet. This will reveal how we respond to life when it throws us curveballs, or when there are delays, when things don't happen in the way we expect them to, when our timelines shift. So often, I am brought to this humbling ego death around control because I have my South Node in Virgo. And so often, when there is a delay or a pivot or a reroute, I can feel my inner frustration coming forward. I can feel my nervous system responding to being out of control. And it's just different timeline points for me that hold trauma around safety and control has been, for me personally and for many people I know, a way to remain safe. And so when something shifts that's out of my control, I notice this inner frustration that's coming from a lack of safety. And almost always, that pivot or that shift is actually better in the end. The universe is always supporting us. And I think that Mars retrogrades are really an opportunity to believe more in this universal co-creative process, this dance, to let go. Let go of timelines, let go of expectations, let go of all of the stuff that we orchestrate and construct within our lives to remain safe, in control. The world is chaotic. There's so much that we are unsure about. We don't know what the next 10 years will look like. Our world is changing so rapidly. Things are dissolving. So often we take that fear and we internalize it and we try to control the happenings within our lives. Now, there can be healthy control, which is the high expression of Saturn, where it's like, okay, what can we construct within our lives that is supportive of feeling safe? And then there's a shadow control, which is when we try to grip to things, even if they're unsupportive because they're familiar or because they create a sense of safety within our systems. And it's our job to retrain our nervous systems to respond to change in a healthier way, to respond to the unknown in a healthier way. That's the Jedi work. It's being with the discomfort of the unknown, of what's changing and shifting within our own lives and collectively, and letting go of how we thought things would be to elevate into the frequency, the higher frequency of what's coming, what's more aligned for us. Trusting the pivot, trusting that the reroute is actually in our favor, because things will always be out of our control. And this month will likely highlight how out of our control they are. Timelines will be shifting under our feet. How do we respond when we feel that we lose our grip or our control over things? This is an opportunity to up-level our response and master within us what feels the fear, the anger, the frustration, especially when there's chaos, especially when we feel like something is shifted and we didn't have a say in it. This is an invitation into deeper patience, surrender, trust, releasing what we cannot control, processing anger and fear. This is very much a theme for this Mars retrograde. Knowing that we cannot control the external, but we can master our internal response. We can master how it activates us internally. We can create more regulation, more safety in times of great change. Now, it's important to note that experiencing anger, experiencing fear, experiencing grief, experiencing rage, experiencing the full spectrum of emotions is important. It's even important to feel activated, to feel the shifts within our nervous system. We're not meant to feel completely regulated all the time. That's not the point. The point is that we develop a deeper relationship with our internal systems so that we know how to find our balance after the dysregulation, after the response, and we return back to our center point. We give ourselves space to process what we're feeling and then move into a higher expression of it. That's why I think that December will be a month where it's very important that we have a lot of alone time, some space to be with what's surfacing for us. I know that's maybe not realistic for everyone if you have small children or if you don't have a lot of support or if you're feeling overwhelmed. But I can tell you, if you're feeling all of those things, space is so essential. So with Mars moving backwards and slowing down, it's a perfect time to audit. What are we giving our energy to? Where are we spending our time? Who are we investing in? How can we give more nourishment to ourselves and to our relationships, to the people that really form the cornerstones of our life? This is a time to recharge, to reset our internal batteries. Like I said, the self, the body is catching up with the soul. So we will feel the slowdown, most likely. And if you do, take the opportunity to go deeper, to audit, to examine what you need more of, what you need less of. All of December will reveal our discomfort with control, our will, truth, and power. With it starting in Leo at 6 degrees Leo, Mars stations retrograde. And it will really reveal where we hold themes around pride, ego, our self-image, courage, expression, authenticity, reactivity, drama. Both Leo and Cancer rule the heart. And so Leo is the heart as in self-love. Mars in Leo will ask us to shed our ego. It will reveal us the ways in which our ego is ruling our life, is overstepping or sabotaging. It will ask us to be very honest with ourselves. When it moves into Cancer, it softens. It's more subterranean. It's more subtle, but just as potent. It brings us into our emotional landscape, our mother wounds, the feminine, the heart work, grief, our emotional processing, the heart as in others, family, home, where we're putting our energy, who are we mothering, and are we mothering ourselves as well? It will be a really powerful time to go inward and to do some very deep remothering work, which is some of my favorite work to do with clients. I almost always either start with or enter into the remothering work when I open a container with someone, because that is almost always a space where we hold our first fragmentation. And this really aligns with this Mars and retrograde theme through Leo and Cancer, is the remothering work and the heart work. I do a lot of heart wall work in my practice. And this is a theme for this retrograde period, opening the heart. Because Leo and Cancer both deal with the heart. This will really force us to examine our heart walls, where we act from our wounds and fears rather than our higher heart. Our higher heart is the space inside of our heart walls. So because our heart is so tender and our heart is the most powerful center that we have, it has its own intelligence. It projects an electromagnetic field at least 3 feet around us at all times, but I believe with intention we can push it out much, much further, which means that our heart frequency is quite literally interacting with the world around us at all times. We can shape our reality through our heart space. And what's interesting is that we develop heart walls throughout our lives when we experience disappointments, rejections, betrayals. These walls, they're sort of like calcified emotions that protect us from our earliest disappointments, our earliest pain points. And so often, these relate to our mothers, because our mothers are our first relationships. And our mothers, we hold so much karma with. We hold a lot of karmic data and material with our mothers because it's one of the most informative and impactful relationships we have in our lives. We begin forming heart walls immediately. We inherit heart walls. We also carry heart walls from past lives. So in order to operate your highest heart frequency, it's important to examine where you hold walls in your life. So we form these walls to protect us from betrayal, disappointment, abandonment, rejection. They really keep us from having to feel too much, to process too much. They oftentimes are formed or calcified when we experience so much disappointment and so much grief at a point in our lives when we don't have the capacity to fully process it. So it forms this wall, this protective layer around our hearts so that we don't have to experience it again. But they also keep us from experiencing the love we truly desire. They not only keep pain out, but they keep love out as well. So if you struggle to receive, if you struggle to feel loved, I would highly suggest you examine where you have heart walls. This is some of the work that I do with clients, and it's some of the most profound and impactful work. There's a lot of emotional processing, but it's also deeply liberating. Tender. This is one of the main themes that this retrograde will reveal is where are you keeping love out? Where are you keeping pain out, but also love, experience? It's important to remember that these are survival mechanisms that we bring in to survive life, to survive the intensity of being human. This time will ask for more self-compassion, more grace, more faith, more surrender. One of the other main themes or main points within this retrograde period from really early October when Mars entered its shadow into May when it exits its shadow is that it will dance once again with Pluto. 2 different times. On January 3rd, it dances with Pluto. It's really between the 1st and the 3rd that Mars again opposes Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius and 1 degree Leo. And then again on April 25th at 3 degrees Aquarius and Leo. So on November 3rd, we had the Mars and Pluto opposition at the last degree of Capricorn. And because Mars is retrograding back, it's going to go back over to 1 degree Leo to oppose Pluto again. And it goes all the way back to sit at 17 degrees Cancer. And then it crosses that point again. So we're crossing this point 3 different times over a 6-month period. These next 2 times will be opportunities to examine the power struggles internally and externally that we have. Mars is primal. It rules aggression, desire, fight, action, charge, movement. We're going to have to up-level our responses to process our anger, to become warriors of light rather than wounding. We have to up-level our responses. And this will be a huge point of examination in this retrograde period, especially because we're talking about the heart, right? So often we see this shadow warrior energy coming from the wounding, coming from the ego. This is an opportunity to shift to a warrior coming from the heart, operating from the heart. When I think about a warrior of light or a warrior of the heart, I think about a strong spine with boundaries and an open heart. And the reason their heart is open is because they feel safe. They know they have boundaries. They know that they have enough confidence in self to uphold those boundaries, to respect self. Their inner child feels secure with their higher self. So this is really internal work. It's up to us to create enough safety within our systems, to drop the heart walls, to set some boundaries within our lives, both with ourselves and others, to build some strong and supportive systems within our lives that create safety so that we can move from the heart rather than the wound, so that we can open our hearts to people even if we don't necessarily understand or agree with them. It's important to note that because retrogrades bring us on a journey, this underworld journey, it can sometimes be difficult to begin something new because you're in the past. You're almost in a different dimension, in a different timeline. So you might feel something during a retrograde period that you feel completely different about on the other side of it. So think back to projects you began pre-October 5th. You might go through a whole journey with that project over the next few months. If there was something that you began before the shadow of both Mercury and Mars retrograde, you can see that through. No, it might transform, your relationship with it might change, the timeline might change. But if you're just beginning something during this retrograde period, allow yourself to sit with it a little bit. Examine, is it coming from the ego or is it coming from the heart? Are you pushing it through because you're operating in fear or the wound? Or is it coming from your higher self, your highest alignment? It might not be clear because retrogrades can be a little murky. Sometimes they can be deeply clarifying and things become crystal clear. But the goal is that we emerge anew on the other side of these retrograde periods. We emerge with more awareness, more wholeness, more embodiment. Because they're these inward journeys. They help us to reclaim self. They help us to cross a threshold. So it's advised to slow down, to create space, and to notice what's beneath the surface. We don't have to act. We don't have to react. We don't have to respond. We can simply be with what is and examine the discomfort within our own systems by simply being. Presence is key during this retrograde period. And so I'm actually pulling from a different deck today. I pulled from Rebecca Campbell's Starseed Oracle deck, which I really love. It's so beautiful. And if you guys have any favorite decks, let me know. I'm kind of looking for a few new ones, although I still love so much the Untamed Elemental, and I feel that our relationship with it on this podcast is not complete, but some days I just feel called to switch it up, and today is one of them. So the card that I pulled is the Star Bathing card, and it's light body, crystal grid, transmission, and activation. It says the stars are constantly showering emanations onto the crystalline grid of the earth. When things are in balance, the planet also sends information back up to the stars. Many starseeds have come to this earth at this time to help shift the planet vibrationally, to activate the ancient codes of wisdom that humanity has forgotten. And all of that information is stored in the crystalline grid. If you pull this card, you may be being called to begin working with the stars and the crystalline grid of the earth. Some people believe that the crystalline grid of the earth anchors divine cosmic frequencies onto the planet. You may be guided to journey into particular places on earth to unlock these cosmic codes with your presence. You may also be interested in a practice called the star bathing. She says you can download a star bathing meditation at www.starseedoracle.me. This card commonly arises because you're here to connect with the crystalline grid of the earth, either in your hometown or by traveling to another place without quite knowing why. It can also mean that your light body, which is the energy body in its highest form, is being activated. If this resonates, take things extra slow in order to integrate this change of vibration. The starseed activation is, I open myself up to receiving the wisdom of the crystalline grid beneath me. May the stars and the earth inform and heal me. As they do, may it heal the earth too. This is so powerful, I think, because we've been talking about slowing down and letting our bodies catch up with all of the upgrades we've undergone over the last year, over the last 15 years. We're at this threshold point, which means that we're both integrating the past and integrating the future timelines at the same time. So it's important to slow down, to feel it. Presence, patience, and really attuning to what needs more attention and safety from you. I know I mentioned it in my last episode, but I'd love to just continue to highlight my favorite small businesses and makers. one being my dear friends at Pound Jewelry. They have some of the most beautiful adornment pieces that you can purchase for yourself or for others during the holiday season. I feel that it's such a special practice and a sacred ancient practice of gifting stones and jewelry and adornments that hold wisdom from the ancient world. It can even be fun to research what crystals are found in your ancestral homelands. All of my ancestors come from the north, so labradorite is a stone that I really connect with as it's an ice stone. Maybe just look it up and look up where your ancestry comes from. This stone will hold the wisdom of thousands and millions of years. So Pound Jewelry actually makes beautiful jewelry with these ancient stones. You can use the code ALLY20 for 20% off any piece. I also have a discount code for the Loom box, which is the red light box that I use, and I love it so much. It's incredibly healing. Red light has been so transformative for me. I just kind of brushed it aside for a while because I just thought it was, it just felt a little too abstract. Sometimes I need things to really hit to believe in them. It must be my Mars and Aries, but when I consistently use this red light box, I notice such a difference in my inflammation, in my sleep. I am a highly sensitive person, so I do tend to lean towards more inflammation, and I really love this box. So I will share the link for that. You can just click the link and it already applies the discount, so that will be in the show notes. The link for Pound Jewelry will be in the show notes. My friend Olivia also makes the most beautiful facial serum, this facial oil called the Rainforest Serum from Earth Archive. I have a code for that as well. It's ALLY11. I find this oil to be so hydrating, so nourishing for my skin, especially during the winter months. I get super, super dry, and it just feels like a ritual. I've been really leaning into ritual, and I think that that's a really powerful practice as well during the winter months, and also for these retrograde seasons, to integrate a few more rituals that feel deeply nourishing. For me, using oils is so nourishing and empowering. It connects me back to ancient Egypt. I just feel that it's a deeply feminine practice and also very loving. So thank you again for being here. Thank you for all of your love and presence. It truly means the world. Every week this podcast grows, and not just my heart grows in correlation to that. So thank you so much for sharing with friends, sharing with family, sharing on social media, sharing your insight that you gain from the episode, things that click in for you. I always love hearing it. I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful week.